Have you ever stopped to think about how a word, any word, like tree, actually works? How it means anything at all? Or how you can look at an ad and get a whole story from it with almost no words? Well, today, we're going to dive deep into that. We're going on a journey to uncover the hidden rules that create meaning, starting with a system that seems perfectly stable, and then we're going to see how a new idea comes along and just blows the whole thing wide open. Okay, let's get into it. So here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the world around us as a huge collection of signs. Then, we'll dig into the basic rules of the game with something called the two-sided sign. We're going to build a really clear, stable model for how language works. But then we're going to see that stable model get completely unraveled, sending us on a never-ending chase for what things really mean.
All right, first up, the world of signs. See, meaning isn't just locked away in dictionaries. It's literally all around us. It's in the clothes we wear, the movies we watch. We just have to learn how to read the signals.
So let me ask you this. What on earth could professional wrestling, a glossy car ad, and the actual car in your driveway possibly have in common? I mean, they seem like they're from completely different planets, right?
Well, the wild thing is, they can all be read just like a book. Every single one of them is a system that's trying to communicate something to you. They're using symbols to tell a story or send a message, whether you realize it or not.
And that brings us to our first big concept, a sign system. It's just any collection of things, objects, actions, you name it, that work together to tell us something. And the study of all this, that's called semiotics. Think of it like a decoder ring for culture. It's the toolkit that lets us understand how wrestling tells us stories of good versus evil, or how the shape of a car screams luxury or adventure.
Okay, so if pretty much anything can be a language, how do we even begin to analyze it? Well, a brilliant linguist named Ferdinand de Saussure gave us the perfect place to start. He basically said you have to separate the rules of the game from the actual game being played.
So we split it in two. On one side, you've got Langue. That's the invisible structure, the shared rulebook we all have in our heads, like the grammar of English. And on the other side, you have Parole. That's the actual stuff we say or write, the individual moves we make in the game. Now, thinkers called structuralists, they're obsessed with Langue. They want to understand the hidden system that makes all our individual conversations possible in the first place.
So if Langue is the system, what are the building blocks? What's it made of? Well, according to Saussure, it's made of signs. And he came up with a really simple but powerful analogy for what a sign is. It's like a coin.
This quote nails it. A sign isn't just one thing. It's got two sides that are stuck together. You can't have a heads without a tails, right? In the same way, you can't have one part of a sign without the other. They're inseparable. So let's look at what those two sides actually are.
Okay, the first side of the coin is the signifier. Now, this is a really important detail. It's not the physical sound itself. It's the mental imprint of that sound. It's the sound image that pops into your head when you think of the word tree. It's that TREE pattern that's stored in your brain. And the other side of that coin? That's the signified. This is the concept, or the idea that the sound image points to. So the signifier tree makes your brain pull up the general concept of a tree. You know, trunk, branches, leaves. And notice, it's not pointing to one specific tree in a park, but to the general idea of treeness that we all share. And here it is. This is the absolute bombshell of Saussure's theory. The connection between the signifier, the sound tree, and the signified, the concept of a tree, is completely, totally arbitrary. There's nothing tree-like about that sound, none at all. We could have just as easily agreed to call it a blorg or a flim.
So if it's arbitrary, why isn't language just total chaos? Simple. It works because of social convention. As a society, we've all just kind of agreed that this sound means that concept. And that shared agreement is what makes language stable. It lets us build this shared world where we can all understand each other. It's a clean, ordered system. Or so it seems.
And right here is where our nice, orderly system starts to get really interesting. Just when we think we've got it all figured out, a new way of thinking called deconstruction comes along and pulls on one little thread that causes the whole thing to unravel.
It all started with one simple but devastating question. We said the word tree points to the concept of a tree, right? But how do you define the concept of a tree without just using more words? You know, words like plant, or wood, or leaves. What if the thing we thought was a stable concept, the signified, isn't a final destination at all, but just another word, another signifier in disguise? And with that one question, the floor just drops out. Deconstruction, a school of thought tied to the philosopher Jacques Derrida, says if that's true, if a signified is just another signifier, then our whole system of language isn't stable. Not at all. It's actually fundamentally, permanently unstable.
So what does that leave us with? If there's no stable concept to anchor our words, we're left with something that feels like an infinite, never-ending chase.
Just follow this chain for a second. You start with the word rose. In the old model, that points to the concept of a rose. End of story. But in this new view, rose just points to other signifiers, like flower. And flower points to others like romance. And romance points to passion or love. And love points to, well, you see where this is going. It goes on and on forever. You never actually arrive at a final concrete meaning.
And here's the massive takeaway from that. Language becomes non-referential. It stops pointing to some stable reality or fixed idea out there. Instead, language only ever refers back to itself. It's just an endless game of signifiers pointing to other signifiers.
And there's a name for this constant postponement, this idea that you never quite get there. It's called the deferral of meaning. Every time you think you've grabbed onto a meaning, it just slips away and points you to the next word in the chain. We're always chasing meaning, but we can never, ever pin it down for good.
So let's step back. Why does this whole trip from a stable system to a totally unstable one even matter? Well, Saussure gave us this incredible toolkit to see the hidden order in our culture. But deconstruction came along and showed us that the whole toolkit is built on a foundation of quicksand. And that changes everything. It changes how we think about communication, how we think about truth, and how we interpret the entire world around us.
Which leaves us with one last really big question to think about. If meaning is always slipping through our fingers, always being postponed in this endless chain of words, how is it that we ever manage to understand each other at all?